How's it going, everyone? Narukami here, and welcome to today's video. Today I am going to be testing out Tal-Noisemaker. This is a freeware synthesizer created by Tal Audio Line. Actually, it's Togu Audio Line. Tal Audio Line is just redundant. And look at that lead speak. And they use a Z, they use a Z instead of an S. That's how you know you're cool. You use an S instead of a Z, and also you use lead speak. So this is pretty awesome synth. Actually, it is pretty awesome. So the reason why I've decided to try out this synth and make a video about it is because, believe it or not, for the longest time I've used 3x OSC. Now, for those of you who don't know what 3x OSC is, basically, you guys who don't use FL Studio, 3x OSC is a stock plugin that comes with FL Studio. It's literally right at the top here. And it is the most bare basic piece of synth that you can ever use. It is not the most complex thing ever. And it honestly doesn't sound that great. Let me just put it up right here. It's really basic, you know. You can't really do much of it, and yeah. So I've been using 3x OSC for about 3 years now. I've been using this since 2013. That's crazy. And if you listen to my music all the way back to my very first EP, at least in Narukami, if you look all the way back to Rebirth from Narukami, that was made with, all the synths there were made with 3x OSC, and all the way until today, until my song Almost There, I use 3x OSC, nothing but 3x OSC. Perhaps I would go to GarageBand and use a synth there, or maybe I'd use Citrus and find presets there. But for my main sounds that I would design and create myself, I use 3x OSC. So using one synthesizer for 3 years, that's not very helpful in terms of creativity. So I figured I need to change. So I was scrolling through forums that I lurk through, and there was a thread that I found, and it was called the Plugin Appreciation Thread. And it was basically a thread where the people there basically post about plugins that they really enjoyed and they really loved, and especially if it was free plugins, then fuck yeah, right? Fuck yeah, we'd love to share it and show our enthusiasm for it. So one of the users actually recommended Noisemaker, and I thought, okay, cool, Noisemaker. It's cool because I actually use Tal plugins in the past. I used their flanger, and I used their tube saturation plugin. Both sound awesome, and I've also played around with their vocoder for a while in the past. And it's also interesting because I've always had Noisemaker in my hard drive for the longest time, and I thought, okay, you know what? I have this, so why don't I play around with it? So I was getting sick of using 3x OSC and not being able to create a lot of new things with it, because I know what to do with it, how to use it, and just whatever, right? I know 3x OSC inside and out, you know, so I wanted to try something different, and I have 3x OSC, and I decided to use it. So I sat down and I told myself, alright, I'm gonna go online, I'm gonna find a tutorial on how to use it, because I didn't know how to goddamn use it. I didn't know a goddamn thing about it. So I looked up a tutorial. I found a pretty great tutorial by this guy named Christian Collins, I believe is his YouTube name. And I saw the tutorial, and it was really fantastic. It basically just showed, it wasn't like super in-depth, but it showed like all the basics that you needed to know, and I thought it was great. So it was all basic knowledge, and I took that knowledge and I basically said, let's try and make a song. And this is what I came up with. It's a progressive house song. I wrote it basically in a day, so before you listen to it, I want to apologize in advance if it sounds kind of not good. But yeah, I basically wrote this in a day, and it's a progressive house song. The reason why I wanted to make a progressive house song was because of the pluck synth, you know, the the dead mousey sort of synth. You can't really make that sort of synth with your XOSC. I mean, you can, but you really have to experiment, play around with it, and plan a lot, you know? I have created something good enough, I would say, but it takes a lot of effort to create something that sounds half as decent. And that's why I wanted to create a progressive house song using a noisemaker, because I it was difficult for me to make that with through XOSC. So why not actually see how easy it is to make it here? And it is easy to make it, and it was great, and it was awesome. And I'll shut up now, and I'll show you what I've worked on. So this is what I've worked on. All right, so that was the song. Unfortunately, because I have a shitty laptop, I can't really show you what I did in the song super in depth. I actually had to bounce all the instruments to wave files. so that I could save my CPU. Because if I didn't like bounce it all to wave, you will just hear crackings and it would just lag and it would be like the worst fucking thing in the world. But I actually did make a separate FL Studio plugin, not plugin, FL Studio project to show you what I did, and that should save a lot more memory, or not memory, but CPU there. So I will now talk about the what I did and the synth. I'll talk about the synth, what I did there, and all that cool stuff. So yeah, let's go. Okay, so now let's talk about my synth. So first things first, we have the most important aspect of progressive house music, the actual progressive house synth. So this is what it sounds like. I want to apologize in advance, by the way, for the all the little sound, the skipping. That's the right word, because my computer just can't handle recording and all that jazz, you know. So I apologize in advance, and I also apologize for burping. So that is the main progressive house synth. So as you can see here, oscillator 1, oscillator 2, two oscillators. They both are on sawtooths. Oscillator 1 is off-pitched ever so slightly, just to give it a chorusy effect. And oscillator 2 is not off-pitched. There's no fine-tuning to it, because I want one synth to sound straight edge and not changing at all, so that it sounds sharper, it sounds cleaner. So they're both moderately combined together, and that's it. On synth 1, on synth 2, I put it through a filter, high release, medium decay, so that you get that plucky sound to it. I put it through low pass 24 dB, and the contouring, I actually put it not at 100%, but at around 70%. So the reason why is because if you actually put the contouring high up, you actually allow more top end to go through. So that's why you put the contouring a bit lower, because then less top end would go through. And I think it just sounds nicer that way. So yes, so for ADSR, low decay, medium decay actually, and pretty high sustain because I don't want the volume to go super crazy, and medium release again, so that these synths are pretty short, so I don't want it to cut off instantly, so this will allow it to trail off and go off. Nothing in the envelope. I was actually fucking around with this. Look how crazy this is. Ah, that's so weird. But the envelope, nothing is going on with it. Let me just turn that off. And then we have control. Nothing going on here, nothing going on here. And by the way, this was before I knew that I could not control the MIDI without pulling this up, so that's why these both are down like that. So at the master, I actually high pass, like rolled off a bit of low end, and I don't know if there's a bit of tuning in this. No, I don't think so, no. And then I put a bit of vintage noise, to add more texture, and I add filter drive because, again, I think this actually adds a bit of like distortion or something with it. So let me just take this off and see if I'm right. Yes. Yes, so it does add a bit of like distortion to it. So this does help in making your synth sound fatter. And yeah, that's it. No external effects. So now let's talk about the external processing. I put it through EQ, rolled off low end up until 70 hertz. Usually I roll off a bit higher, but I guess I didn't do it this time. Then I put it through tube saturation, free fuzz, really great tube saturation plugin. It sounds fucking awesome, and it just works. It's very simple. So I put it through tube saturation, make it sound a bit fat. Then I put it through multiply, which is a chorus plugin, which is basically what makes it sound so freaking amazing. So let me turn this off and you can hear what it sounds like. So multiply basically just makes it sound fucking awesome. Let me just put this all the way up too. So it sounds pretty amazing. So I put quite a lot. I put a lot of voices, and I had the frequency modulation pretty medium depth. So if you don't know what frequency modulation is, this basically controls how fat the actual chorus sounds. So let me just play around with this. So as you can hear, it makes it sound much more fatter. And I put quite a lot of stereo. I didn't put it at 100%, as you noticed, because if I put it at 100%, it sounds really strange, and I just, So, mixed it quite a bit. The wet is much more higher than the dry, and I EQ'd the wet signal, rolled off the low end, put a bit of top end right there, and yeah. And then I put it through Soundgoodizer. Of course, you have to. That is the law. If you have FL Studio, you have to put it through Soundgoodizer. And it does make it sound good. Dizer. So this is what it sounds like without Soundgoodizer. So it sounds more exciting with Soundgoodizer, obviously. And then here I rolled off a bit of the low mids around the bass area because there was a bit too much in that frequency. And I also rolled off a bit of the top, not rolled off, but I took out a bit of top end. Again, I felt like it was too exciting, so I wanted to take it off a bit. And here you see a second EQ, and you might think, what is this? Well, this is actually automating. I'm actually automating the volume using this EQ because in the actual song, if you actually push this up, it doesn't sound too exciting. I actually needed to automate the volume so that it sounds like it's getting bigger and it sounds like there's an increase in energy. So that's why this is here. It's basically automating the volume. So yeah. And that's it with the Progressive House synth. So then we have the bass line, which is basically a copy paste of this. I literally just copy pasted it, but instead I transposed it one octave lower, and that's it. That's literally it with the synth. Nothing different with it at all. I also layered it with a sub bass, so let me just play the sub bass. Because it just sounds messy. That's it. So I layered it two together. So yes, and then I have, so in terms of processing, they're both going through different processes, not too different. For the sawtooth for the plucky bass line, I rolled off the low end. I actually didn't roll it off at the start. I actually did it at the very end here. Yeah. So I rolled off a bit of the low end so that there's no rumble. Put in tube saturation. Then I put it through a chorus plugin, and this is actually a mono chorus plugin. There's no stereo control with this. You can't control the width of it. So this gives it a really strange fat sound. So I don't know if you can tell the difference, but it just sounds a bit fatter. Then going through Soundgoodizer, fruit limiter to lower the volume, and you can see here I rolled off 100 hertz or 111 hertz, and cut off a bit of low mid range, and then sub bass. Not a lot happening, cut off a bit of low rumble, put a bit of tube saturation, put Soundgoodizer, put fruit limiter, and then they're both going here, which is layering. Then I put Soundgoodizer here, but it's not a lot of Soundgoodizer actually. It's a very low amount of Soundgoodizer. I just want to glue the two sounds together so they sound like one sound. They sound coherent. They don't sound like two different synths playing at the same time. They sound like one synth. And of course I lowered the volume again. So that is the bass. Then we have this lead synth. Kind of trancey sawtooth lead. So I actually layered it with a 3x OSC sound, just a simple triangle sawtooth going through a cutoff, and with portamento. So if you listen to the pluck synth, the sawtooth synth by itself, Sounds kind of tinny by itself, you know, but if I actually put the triangle, it sounds a bit more fatter. It sort of fills in the space. So let's talk. So I don't even have to talk about this. I literally just showed you what I did with this. So I'll just talk about what I did with Noisemaker. So Noisemaker, there are two oscillators going on. Basically the same thing as this. Literally the same thing. Oscillator 1, it's actually tuned one octave higher than octave 2. Octave 2 is oscillator 2. God, I'm an idiot. Oscillator 2 is one octave lower. Oscillator 1 is one octave higher, and it's also a bit off-pitched, a bit fine-tuned. And then oscillator 1 isn't as loud as oscillator 2. Oscillator 2 is basically at 0. Oscillator 1 is at around -7. And I put in portamento, and that is it. Oh, I also put it through filter. Basically the same parameters as this, but not entirely different. And that is pretty much it. And of course a bit of noise, and not a lot of filter drive. No filter drive at all. Then both of these is going through the mixer, which are the same processes. So cut off a lot of the low end, a bit of top end, so there's no higher frequencies that's messing up the audio. Then going through the same chorus as the bass line, but as you can see, this is in mono, but this one is in stereo. So this gives me like a stereo spread to it. So if I play it without the stereo, there's no width to it, so this gives it a very chorusy sound, and it also gives it stereo spread, which is cool. And then I put it through a delay. So this makes it sound bigger, you know. And I didn't put it through limiter. I guess I didn't put it through sound godizer. And I believe that is it. Oh, and I also cut off a lot of low mid. And same situation as the main synth. I basically can automate the volume so that it sounds like there's more energy. And finally, let me just turn this off while I'm sounding Australian. Finally, I put in a 303 synthesizer. Well, it's not an actual 303, but I basically made it to the sound. I designed it to sound like a 303. So let me just play it. That's it. It sounds really nice. I love it. So basically, it's just oscillator 2 with just a sawtooth, and that's literally it in this aspect. There's no oscillator 1. And then, as you can see, LFO2, I actually modulated the panning so that it goes left and right, gives it that stereo width that this song so needs. And then I put it through CLLP, put the cutoff really low, put the contouring somewhere in the middle, and then I put a high amount of resonance with this. So the resonance gives it that 303 sort of sound, and that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it with this. I didn't even like put it through processing. This is just mixing, just EQing. I didn't put it through EQ. Yeah, I didn't even put it through a lot of processing, to be honest, because it just sounded so great by itself. So that is basically this song. I basically just showed you everything I did, and this is basically Tal-Noisemaker. And yeah, so what do I think of it? What do I think of Tal-Noisemaker? I love it, man. I think it sounds pretty fucking awesome. For what it is, you know, it's free, and yet it sounds so fucking awesome, you know? Like, I don't know, man. Like, what's really, like, a really big plus to me is because, you know, I have Citrus, because I do have the producer edition of FL Studio. So I have Citrus along, but Citrus is so confusing. Let me just bring that back again. Citrus is incredibly confusing. For me, at least. I'm sure someone knows how to use it, but I don't understand it, and it's a bit too confusing for me, you know? For me, I want a synth that I can just play around with real quick, and then boom, that's it, you know? And so big plus for me with Tal-Noisemaker is that it's really, really simple. Like, it looks difficult at first with all these panels and all that stuff, but like, once you figure that out, everything just makes sense. It's like, okay, I could just do this, I could just do this. And it just works, and it's awesome. And that's one of the reasons why I actually stuck with 3XOSC, because it's really simple and it just works. You know, I don't want to mess around with shit that confuses me, and I don't want to be like, oh fuck, what do I do with this? What do I do with this? So that's why I stuck with 3XOSC. But when I play with Noisemaker, it's easy, you know, it's just as easy as 3XOSC, but with much more parameters, and it sounds greater. And that's another thing that I really like. It sounds really great. Now, I know some of you guys who use like Massive, or what was that other thing, Solver? Is that what it's called? I don't know. I know some of you guys who use that are like, oh fucking, I can just use Massive. It's like, okay, I don't pirate shit. Can't believe I just said that. I don't care about piracy, but you know, I don't use Massive, and I can't afford Massive, and I don't want to obtain Massive in a way that is illegal. So, you know, I don't have Massive or expensive plugins, so all I'm left with is, you know, plugins like this, which is free. And it sounds great, you know, even though it's free. Like, you wouldn't expect it to sound this great and have this much versatility and control with it, even though and have it sound great, you know, and it's free, which is amazing. You know, these guys, Togu Audio Line, really did this out of love, you know, and they were like, let's just sit down and create plugins that are awesome, because they have a lot of awesome sounding plugins. And by the way, I'm not sponsored by Audio Line, by Tal, you know. I would fucking love to be sponsored by someone, but I'm not sponsored by Tal, and I don't even think Tal has enough money to sponsor anyone, because all their plugins are fucking free. So I'm not sponsored by them. I'm giving credit where credit is due. It sounds awesome, and it sounds nice, and it's great. And this is definitely gonna be a new synth that I'll be using. Do I have problems with it? Yes, I do have a few problems with this. For example, the portamento doesn't sound as nice as what I'm used to. 3XOSC has portamento, and it sounds sweet. It sounds punchy, it sounds clicky, and it's just bam, bam, bam. It sounds great. But the portamento in Noisemaker it isn't as great as I'd want it to be. So if I just turn it on real quick, let me just turn it on. So you hear the portamento, and you might think, that actually sounds decent, but you know, I would want a portamento to sound like this. This is what the portamento sounds like on 3XOSC. Ah, fuck, I'm sorry. Just put it one octave low. So as you can hear, it has that punchy, clicky sound to it, which, you know, I'm used to. That's what I'm used to when I think of portamento. So that's what I like. The portamento does sound good here, but it doesn't sound, it doesn't do what I expect it to do, you know. It does sound good. I'm not gonna lie, it sounds good, but it's not what I expect, you know. But that's just my issue, and that's it. Another thing, is there another thing that I can be critical of? I'm not sure, honestly. Maybe it's the fact that the crusher sounds a bit, you know, not good. But again, I don't feel like it doesn't sound good because they're not competent. I feel like it doesn't sound good because they were just experimenting and they were trying to do something different. So that's what I get from this. Even though I'm not a fan of it, it sounds different from what I would expect. So, you know, is that a bad thing or is that a good thing? You know? So yeah, so that's the only two complaints that I have, at least from what I know, are just those two. At least from the recording of this video, those are the only two complaints that I have. So yeah, but it does sound great. It sounds really clean. It sounds really smooth, you know. especially compared to 3XOSC. And another thing that I think should be talked about, or that should be mentioned, are the presets. The presets all sound fantastic. There are a lot of presets here. You have ARPs, you have basses, you have chords, I believe. I don't know what this is. Drums. There we go. You have drums. You have effects. You have keyboards. You have keys. You have leads. You have pads. Like, this is a lot of great sounding presets. I played with them, and they do sound really, really nice. You know, someone really worked hard with these presets to make it sound as nice as possible, and they don't use external plugins either. So, you know, again, big ups, as they would say. You know, so yeah, I think it sounds awesome. You know, and you have to try it out. I really have to say that. Like, if you haven't tried it out, I'd recommend it. You know, if you're looking for a new synth that is different, that sounds nice, that sounds great, you have to try it out. You know, and it's free. You're not, the only thing that you're going to be paying with is your time when you're using this, you know. So yeah, this is that's all I have to say. It sounds great, and this is definitely going to be my new synth in the future. So that is all for today's video. God, I hope this didn't go on longer than it did. I just want to say I actually recorded this twice today. The first time I recorded it for like an hour, and this is an hour as well. I recorded it for an hour, and by the end of the recording session, I learned that I did not record the computer audio. That is just God, that was depressing. I was so mad, and I was like, all right, I have to record this again, and I did. And now hopefully the audio is recorded this time. You guys will know. But yes, so that is all for today's video. If you liked it, you know, standard stuff. If you liked it, give it a like. If you don't like it, give it a dislike. And if you have used Noisemaker in the past, you know, like, tell me if you like it, you know, tell me your experiences with it, you know, because I would love to hear other people's, like, love or even hate. Like, if you have criticisms about it, you know, be sure to share them, because I would be interested in reading up on that as well. So yeah, that's all I have to say, and my name is Narukami. Thank you for listening.